שלום וברוכים הבאים. רגע אחד לפני שאתם קופצים פנימה לתוך התוכן, יש לי משהו להגיד לכם ככה מלב ולב. אני יודעת שיש כאלה שיש להם נטייה לעבור ישר לשיחה עצמה, אבל זה חשוב לי כן להגיד גם לאלו שהרבה זמן עוקבים אחרי הערוץ וגם לחדשים, שלי מאוד חשוב לקדם בערוץ שלי ביוטיוב ובכל האפליקציות, בכל רשת חברתית שאני נמצאת בה, את הערכים שאני מאמינה בהם. חשוב לי שזה יהיה ערכים של למידה ומשמעות ויצירתיות, אהבת הארץ, לשלב בין המסורת היפה שלנו לבין חדשנות. אני לא מוכנה להתפשר, לא בשביל לייקים ושיתופים וחשיפה, כי לפעמים זה מקום שהוא גם יותר קל. אני עושה מאמץ אדיר בשביל לעמוד בערכים האלה, למצוא מרואיינים, אנשי שיחה שמביאים נקודות מבט אחרות, מספרים סיפורים שלא נמצאים בערוצים הישראלים. נכון שלפעמים המחיר הוא שהם לא דוברי עברית, שאין מה לעשות, הם מדברים בשפה שלהם. ואני נאלצת להקליט את זה בשפה האנגלית. נכון שזה לא המצב האידיאל, וגם אני הייתי רוצה שזה יהיה בשפה העברית, אבל זה לא תמיד מתאפשר. אני עולה עוד קומה במאמץ שלי מעבר למציאת האנשים, לשלב בינה מלאכותית, להכניס כתוביות מקצועיות, וכל דרך שאני מוצאת כדי להנגיש את זה בצורה קלה וטובה ונוחה. אז אתם יודעים, אני לא מבקשת מכם לא לשתף, ואני גם לא שמה פרסומות בתשלום, למרות שאני יכולה לעשות את זה. עד כה לא עשיתי את זה כדי לאפשר לכם צפייה זורמת ואיכותית. כמובן, אם אתם תחליטו לעזור לי ולשתף ולהפיץ ולספר, אני בטח לא אגיד לא, ואני מודה מראש על כך, ברכה על ראשכם כמו שאומרים. אז היה חשוב לי להגיד את הדברים האלו, שהם לא ברורים אליהם, ומפה אני בעצם רוצה להציג את האורח שלנו, זה החלק השני בשיחה והאחרון. האורח הוא רוברט ספנסר, סופר, היסטוריון, והוא מבקר אסלאם אמריקאי, מהדמויות המובילות בעולם בחקר האסלאם. ספנסר הוא היה חלוץ בתחומו, הוא, איך אומרים, ספג עלבונות ופגיעות ודחיות גם מיהודים, גם כשהוא בא לבקר בארץ. הביטוי הזה שזורקים עגבניות על אדם על הבמה, כדי להשפיל אותו, הוא עבר דברים מאוד דומים, גם לצערי על ידינו, על ידי היהודים. אבל הוא לא נכנע, והיום הקול שלו כל כך חשוב, שכבר מצטטים ממנו, לוקחים ממנו תכנים, לומדים ממנו. הוא בעצמו, בגלל הניסיון הייחודי והמעמיק שלו, מנחה סמינרים, גם למפקדי צבא ארצות הברית, לאנשי ה-FBI, לקהילת המודיעין האמריקאית, וכל מיני גופים ממשלתיים נוספים. אז בפרק הראשון התחלנו ממש בהתחלה, הגדרנו מה זה ג'יהאד, למה המערב עיוור, דיברנו גם על הדמות של מוחמד ועל ממשיכי דרכו, דיברנו על התקינות פוליטית, למה זה כל כך משמעותי בהבנת האסלאם, ואנחנו ממשיכים בפרק הזה לצלול פנימה. אז שתהיה לכם צפייה מהנה וכמובן מועילה. So in a way, how do you access the impact of the political correctness on dealing with jihad in America, in Europe?
Yes, it's been completely devastating. And so the average person today has no idea what we're dealing with or what's in the offing. And so, for example, you have the border question and the migration and mass migration into countries in Europe. And to a lesser degree, the United States, mass migration of Muslims. And all over Europe, if you say there's something wrong with that, or it's bringing rising crime and the rapes and everything else, and jihad, you're a racist. So it can't be said. And they're even trying to outlaw the party in Germany that's against mass migration because they're Nazis. Well, it might be possible that you could not be a Nazi and still not be in favor of the Islamization of your countries, but the authorities are willfully blind to what Islamization means or if it's even a possibility. They just think some Muslims will move in and we'll have a multicultural society and everything will be wonderful. The idea of a supremely intolerant and supremacist ideology coming and overwhelming the rest, that doesn't ever occur to them.
You see a progress or a regress about the jihad in the Western country since October 7? Because I think it was a game changer, October 7th. So it's like shake the whole world. So
Yeah, October 7th made jihad much more mainstream in the West. And now
mainstream?
openly, yes, people openly saying they support Hamas, they support Hezbollah, and nobody minds. And this has become very common,
Wow.
particularly at university campuses in the United States, when even just 2 years ago it would have been unheard of. These are still listed as terrorist groups, and there's abundant reason for that, of course. But now it really actually comes with the spread of Marxism. And the framing of the entire conflict as one between the oppressor and the oppressed. And of course, the oppressor is white European and the oppressed is a brown Middle Easterner. This is fictional, but this is the framework that the left looks at the problem through. And so they think we have to, in all cases, stand with the oppressed against the oppressor, and with the brown oppressed against the white oppressor. And so we have to hate Israel and stand with Hamas and Hezbollah. And that this framework doesn't apply in this situation, they don't know. They have not studied these things themselves. They've just been propagandized. They don't know about jihad. They learn that anything negative about Islam is racist and Islamophobic, so they're not supposed to hear it anyway. And so the whole thing becomes, it starts to feed on itself and compound and grow exponentially worse because it's the left's false assumptions building on the false assumptions that have been prevailing in the culture about Islam, and it all becomes even worse.
So where is the solution start? Do you think the new government in America, now that they vote for Trump, will do the change? Do you think some people are waking up? It's
It's
already
already
started.
started to a tremendous degree. We don't see it so much with Israel as thus far, but it is there. We see it with other aspects of the fantasies and delusions and falsehoods that the left tries to foist upon us, like men can become women and become champion female sportsmen and so on. This kind of thing people have less and less patience with. And that's a denial of reality on par with the denial of reality that's going on in regard to the jihad against Israel. So I think that as one continues to weaken, the other will also. Also, if Trump is allowed to become president and has some freedom to act, then that could change things considerably because he's unapologetically pro-Israel. I find it astonishing. Even just today, I was reading the forward, the Jewish paper, and they're talking about what to do if you're in mourning about the election, and it was all about various issues of the culture and so on. And I thought, don't you understand the existential threat, the life and death threat that you're facing, and you're blandly thinking that this man is going to be bad for you when actually he might be the only thing standing between you and another genocide. I don't understand the thinking there. I do think that the left loves Islam because of the oppressor oppressed and racism frameworks, and also because it's collectivist and internationalist. And Israel is so stubbornly particular and not internationalist or collectivist. And so they want it destroyed as a result. But I don't think that's widely understood, even in the Jewish community. And so there's far too much support for the left. But Donald Trump is, well, they've been trying to destroy him for so long and have thrown so many things at him. I find it hard to believe they're going to just let him take office. I think we're going to see something happen between now and January 20th. But should he?
I hope they won't kill him. It's like
Oh, certainly. Yeah,
so
they could.
many enemies around him, especially I think from Iran. They may. I hope they won't succeed to do it, but I'm definitely sure they are planning to do it.
Yes, that could easily happen. Or something else. We had a congressman say they wouldn't let him take office, so we'll see. But in any case, he represents a great dissatisfaction with the dominant left and with the intellectual and ideological straitjacket that they've tried to force upon us. And so if he succeeds, then that could change things a great deal for Israel and for the general understanding of the jihad.
Do you think Israel doing right in this war? They are know how to handle the situation with the Islam. You know, we are under attack with 7 countries and areas.
In a sense, yes, and in a sense, no.
What yes and what no? Start with the good one. With the
The
good
good
one.
one is, so I think since October 7th, with the great exception of that day itself, which of course the full story has not yet been told, but since then the war has been pursued very capably. And of course, with no help from the United States and the Biden administration, nonetheless, the destruction of Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, these have been marvelous to see and deeply encouraging. And I hope that the Israelis will be able to continue and crush those as organizations so that the jihad will be set back decades and they'll have to regroup altogether. But other than that, in a larger sense, going back decades, the problem has been wrongly handled. And that's not entirely the fault of the Israeli authorities, although it is to some degree. It starts with Camp David.
Yeah, I
in the
knew we will talk about it. I knew. It's still bleeding in my body, this event. Okay.
Yeah, it was a terrible thing. And people can read about how bad it was in my book, The Palestinian Delusion. Jimmy Carter, the president, was entranced with Anwar Sadat. And Anwar Sadat was not the great peacemaker that he's reputed to be. He was an opportunist and a very clever man who understood that he could get more of what he wanted by being an ally of the United States and posing as a peacemaker than he could by remaining a client of the Soviet Union and being an opponent of the Israelis and the United States. And this worked perfectly. He got Israel to withdraw from Sinai. He got Israel to recognize the existence of the Palestinians as a people. Now, Menachem Begin, the prime minister of Israel, he argued against this and tried to show Jimmy Carter that there is no Palestinian ethnicity or nationality. These are just the local Arabs, identical to the Arabs of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. And thus, the idea that they need a nation state is wrongly conceived. And the fact that they were not given citizenship in those surrounding states is clear that it was just a weapon those surrounding states wanted to use the Palestinian Arabs as a weapon to beat Israel with.
Yeah.
But Carter wouldn't hear it. He loved Sadat and he gave Sadat everything. And the Israelis signed on to the final agreements which recognized the existence of a Palestinian people. Then Yitzhak Rabin made it even worse in the 90s when he agreed at Oslo to the formation of the Palestinian Authority for the creation, ultimately, of a Palestinian state, when there's still no Palestinian people. It's a fictional nationality.
Science
and that's
fiction.
The biggest problem, yes. This is the biggest problem, and nobody's talking about it. I don't see it anywhere in the Israeli press. I hope I'm wrong about that, but
now it's changed. Israel was surprised on October 7th, and this is a fact. Despite all overt and covert intelligence that was available, the senior Israeli intelligence official refused to believe that the Gaza Arabs could carry out such a sadistic massacre. You know, there were plenty of warning on the ground and we could have prevented the massacre. What is really interesting is that up to now, the Israelis blame Netanyahu and the previous government led by Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, who transferred them $30 million per year, plus electricity and water that Israel gave them, and up to now they didn't pay a penny for it. So why would they attack us? How is it possible that all the money from Israel and from the world, instead of develop Gaza, went to terrorism, and they use it in education, in mosques? They were buying so many weapons and munitions, and were building in beneath the ground kilometers of tunnel. All of them were used only for terror. So how come they did it? It's so absurd. You know, the communities that lived on the border with Gaza, the Israel and Gaza border, who were massacred first, were mostly peace activities, who even took children and patients to the hospitals in Israel by their own time and in their own cars. So this is why it's so shocking. But you know, some voices in Israel during all those years warned that something will happen, and instead of listening to them, were considered extremists, some of whom the CIA even defined as dangerous and put severe sanctions on them. Today, when I'm looking back, and everyone who looks back, you can see that they were right, and therefore more voices like theirs are being heard, especially since there is a revolution in Israel media. For example, competitors like Channel 40 really giving a fight to Haaretz newspaper, which is indeed Israeli, but they are a very radical left wing, and they did a damage to Israel all over the world. So the public claims that is not much change, and if there is, it is very tiny and small change. I see things differently. There is definitely a change. People are more researching, asking, interested in podcasts on current affairs, on Islam, or on Judaism, on the Middle East. They want to know much more. And the soldiers who have been fighting for 14 months are learning from the ground and see with their own eyes what is really going on inside Gaza and Lebanon and Syria. And those young people will definitely influence and rebuild New Israel. I see it.
I hope so.
I think so. I hope so too. I don't know. I guess, I assume. But this is how I'm reading the map in Israel. And you know, in a way, the Christianity and Judaism are sister and brother. They are an ally. Where do you see the most strongest similarity between those two religions?
The strongest similarity between
Judaism and Christianity.
Well, they have the same scripture, except the Christians have some more. But this makes for a common religious framework, a common understanding of so many things that go back to some of the biggest questions of existence, as to, you know, what is the purpose of human existence and what is the peculiarity of it, and so on. I mean, obviously there are tremendously different understandings of a great deal of the aspects of those scriptures, and yet, like you say, it's a fraternal disagreement. It's not like Christianity and Buddhism or something like that, where the entire framework is different to the degree that you have to start at the very basics to try to achieve some common understanding. Jews and Christians if they're mutually favorably disposed to one another, could have a discussion that, and it could involve Abraham and Moses and David and Solomon and all the rest, and they could talk about these with complete understanding. And so there's a great deal of a basis for commonality right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And we both, in a way, believe in the Mashiach. You know what is Mashiach in Hebrew?
Of course, yes.
So in Israel, we divide the people into two. It's not it's not similarity with the quantity of people, but some of us believe the Mashiach will. Wow, you have a very beautiful glass. It looks like from China or something.
I don't know where it's, maybe it is. Everything's from China. It doesn't say.
Um, so we believe Mashiach will come one day, and then the optimum, beautiful life will come. And the Christian people also believe in the Mashiach, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, well, they say Jesus is the Moshiach.
Yes.
That's like
This is something that we disagree. Who is the Mashiach? Maybe it us. Who knows? Um,
it's interesting to note
okay.
that
Yes, please.
in Islam,
Mm-hmm.
you look at now. See, you can fill in perhaps on this what the perspective from Judaism would be, but Islam and Christianity have exactly opposite views of the end of the world, of eschatology.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because I think that it reveals a great deal. For example, in the Christian scriptures, Jesus is called the King of Kings. So, and of course, that's a messianic title
Mm-hmm.
going
It
back
is.
to the Jewish scriptures. So, in the Hadith, Muhammad says, "There is no one more hateful in the eyes of Allah on the day of judgment than the one who calls himself the King of Kings." So
And
you see, just the opposite.
it's completely the opposite, yeah.
Yes. And so I think you have clearly then two opposing views of the world in many, many ways. That sums up right there in that one statement. And I think that it is maybe not all Jews would accept this, and not all Christians would either, but Judaism and Christianity are on the one side and Islam is on the other. I have, on the other hand, been on panel discussions with rabbis who say, no, no, Judaism and Islam are much closer and Christianity is on the other side. But I think I respectfully disagree with that view.
I agree with you, but you know what's interesting? A Jew can go to pray in a mosque, and a Muslim can pray in a synagogue, but Jews are not allowed to pray in a church. Yes, so we cannot go there and pray, only in a mosque. So this is interesting.
According to whom you can go pray in a mosque and not in a church?
By our Bible, by our religion.
But that's very strange because in the Quran it says that there's nobody who well, actually, let me make sure that I say it right
Okay.
because I don't want to misquote it, and I often refer to this, but in this context I want to make sure that I have the exact words. Chapter 5 verse 82 of the Quran says, "You will find the Jews and the idolaters the most vehement of mankind in hostility to those who believe." So you have the Muslims being taught from the Quran, the perfect word of Allah, that the Jews are their worst enemies.
You know, maybe the Muslim cannot come and pray in our synagogue, but 100% we can go there and pray in the mosques. This is 100% right. Huh?
Have you ever done it?
No, but I saw a video this week of a religion Jews went into a mosque and prayed, and I was so scared that they will just murder him. I don't know why he did it.
Yes.
But yes, this is something that I know for sure we can do it.
Interesting.
Yes. See, you learned something from me, Robert, today.
Yes, thank you. I would hope ultimately that will be re-examined. I think it might be short-sighted, but
How many times you read the Quran, Robert?
Oh, I don't know. I've read the Quran
So
hundreds
many
and
times. Yeah.
times, many times. This critical Quran that I was just quoting, this is a
Wow, it's a huge
this
one.
is my own translation and commentary.
Mhm.
The translation works from an earlier one, but I adapted it based on the Arabic as well as on different understandings of some of the passages from what I was working from. So, anyway, yes, it's funny because you read attacks on me and they say he ignores all the peaceful passages of the Quran. I don't ignore any passage of the Quran. It's all in there.
It's all.
And uh,
But
there's commentary on it as well.
maybe, but sometimes you can read a text and you can see it in a different way. You know, even in our Bible, you can read it in three ways. The just the simple way, the deep one, and then there is a deeper one. So
Yes,
there are three
that's
ways
something
to
that
read
you
every
don't
text.
have in Islam.
Sorry?
Islam, the literal understanding is overwhelmingly paramount.
Hmm.
And this is made very clear in numerous rulings of the Islamic authorities. Like, take, for example, jihad. You read the Quran, and there are passages that have to do with the internal struggle, and passages that have to do with defensive war, and also passages that have to do with offensive war.
Hmm.
And then there are innumerable Islamic authorities, going back to Muhammad's first biographer, Ibn Ishaq, in the 8th century, who say the passages regarding offensive war take precedence over the others.
Hmm.
So they don't, in other words, say we only understand this in a spiritual sense today. They're saying take up arms and wage offensive war against non-Muslims.
Yes, what is Bnei Israel, the people of Israel? It's written in the Quran more
Yes.
than once.
Oh yeah.
And it's very clear in the Quran that we're supposed to come back to our country in Israel. Bnei Israel, Israel, this is our country.
Yeah, it
And
says that, but it also says that the Bnei Israel have sinned against Allah, are under the curse of Allah, are enemies of Allah,
yes,
and so
true.
on. Also, it's very important to remember that the Quran says that Abraham was a Muslim.
Yes, this is
So,
my next question. So, how can we deal with it? If they think that Avraham is a Muslim, if they think Bnei Israel gone in the wind, and the Jews who live in Israel are not continuation of the Bnei Israel, it's like everything is a lie. Everything is upside down. Everything go all the way around. How can we deal with such so many lies and so many misleading the history?
well, in the first place, it's very important to understand. Most people don't understand this. And they read the Quran and they see that it says the Jews and the Christians will go to paradise. That's chapter 2, verse 62. Uh, and says, like you said, the children of Israel should live in the land. That's all in there, but it's not understood the way we assume it to be understood because the prophets in the Quran are all Muslims. Abraham, Moses was a Muslim,
True. Yeah, I know.
David and Solomon, all of them. So, if they're all Muslims, where did they get Judaism? It's the creation of the children of Israel when they rejected Allah.
Hmm.
They changed the scriptures to create Judaism. That's the Islam. Oh, if all the prophets were Muslims, then where does Judaism come from? It is the creation of the children of Israel who rejected Allah and
Hmm.
are under his curse, and they changed the scriptures to reflect their own proclivities, and that's what Judaism is.
Hmm.
So it's a false religion. It's not the religion of Abraham and Moses. The real children of Israel are the followers of Abraham and Moses, and that's the Muslims. So they're the ones that inherit the land, and they're the ones that all the promises that are given to the children of Israel, they are the recipients, not the Jews. And the Jews, it's the same thing for the Christians. Jesus
Yeah.
was also a Muslim. So the Christians are not the real Christians either. You're only a real Jew or a Christian if you're a Muslim.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like a lost conflict, lost war, lost argument. Like we will never agree. And this is something that really frustrating me. when it comes to religion war, there is no solution. Like you will fight forever, and when I hear some people saying that we don't need religions, in a way, I can understand why they are saying it. Like a religion will make this conflict and war forever and ever because we will never agree.
That's right.
Uh,
There's no solution. It will
there is no
always
solution.
remain. As long as there are people who believe in the Quran, they will think they have to destroy Israel
Wow.
because the Quran commands that Israel be destroyed when it says, drive them out from where they drove you out. Now, you can say, we didn't drive you out, you left. That's true. But they are always taught that they were driven out. And this is very important because when they're taught they were driven out, so that then they will hear the Quran say, drive them out from where they drove you out, and they think that Allah is commanding them to fight against the Israelis, and that will always remain. So the only thing you can do is be strong and remain strong, because you do not in Islamic theology wage jihad against a foe who you can't defeat. And so it's only because we're weak that this is all happening.
Yeah, like you know who is Jabotinsky, who talked about the iron wall?
Yes.
I believe in that very much, and we need to be strong always because this is our destiny probably to live in a small, tiny land among all those Muslims. Um, Wow, it was very interesting talking to you, Albert. Do you want to give me some hope before we are ending this interview? Because, after 14 months of war, and I'm living in northern Israel, so we've been under attack every day. Um,
Yes, that's very difficult.
it is, it's unbelievable to live in a survival mode 24/7 for so long, and the media in the world don't show it and ignore completely from our situation, and they're always showing what is happening in Lebanon. By the way, we have nothing with Lebanon. Israel has no interest in fighting Lebanon. The problem is that Iran established Hezbollah in Lebanon as part of stranglehold around us. Hezbollah is taking over Lebanon, and the attacked tunnel and the amount of weapon that Hezbollah has built are insane as a strategy to destroy Israel. But anyhow, Robert, do you have something nice with hope to tell us before we are ending our talk?
The only hope is
Buy the same cup I have.
the hope. I think you were talking about the commonality between Judaism and Christianity,
Mhm.
and it's interesting. There's a big point of controversy
Okay.
between Judaism and Christianity, and that's the 53rd chapter of the book of the prophet Isaiah. Are you familiar with it?
Mhm. I
It's the Christians say this is a prophecy of Jesus because it says by his wounds we are healed and things like that. And the
Mhm.
Jews say this has to do with the nation of Israel being the suffering servant for the world. And I think I'm the only one in the world who thinks this, or maybe there's somebody else who will see this program. I think it's both. That the nation of Israel, the Jews, have a particular spiritual role to play that does involve suffering on behalf of the larger world, and that this is something that is in the plan of God that will ultimately be resolved in a favorable direction for everybody concerned. And thus, it's not an either or, that it's the Jewish understanding or the Christian understanding of this passage, that they can both have validity.
Mm.
I can say that
I,
as
I,
a
I,
Christian.
I
And
can relate it to what you're saying.
but even if we leave aside the whole Christian aspect of it, that passage, I think, shows that the Jews, as we have seen throughout history, will have a very difficult time in the world, and that this is part of God's plan, and God's plan ultimately will come out with the consummation of all things, and thus we can have hope in Him.
True. That's very nice, Robert. And thank you for your time. Did you visit Israel, by the way, or can I invite you to come?
I'd love to come back. I hope
Please
I'll be
come. I'm
back.
living in northern Israel. I'm telling you, it's amazing. part of Israel, and you are more than welcome here.
I had lunch once right north of we crossed the Sea of Galilee on a boat.
I
and
can
then,
see Sea of Galilee from my window.
yeah, I was right in your neighborhood then. And there was a very nice restaurant in the north, and we were having lunch, and people pointed out, you see that up above, that's the Golan Heights. The Syrians would stand there and shoot down at the farmers, so they couldn't farm because they would go out and get killed. So this is why we have the Golan Heights, and this allows for the whole of this area to live in peace. And I thought that was very striking. I'd love to go back there.
I'll send you videos of the Golan Heights from tomorrow morning, because it's in front of me.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we went there too, looked into Quneitra anyway. It was a fascinating...
Quneitra is a beautiful, amazing place. It's like you are going there and you are feeling you are in a movie.
Yes.
It's more than beautiful. It's really unique.
Yes, indeed. So I hope to get back one day.
I hope so too. I hope it will be soon, and I hope this war will end even sooner.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you. Very good speaking.
Thank you. ביי. ביי. זה היה פרק נוסף של דרך המחשבה. כל הפרקים זמינים באפליקציות הפודקאסטים, בערוץ היוטיוב ובפייסבוק. אם עדיין לא הצטרפתם, זה הזמן. להרצאות בנושא חשיבה יצירתית, חדשנות, יזמות, אסטרטגיה רגשית ומדיטציה, מוזמנים לפנות אליי ישירות לאופיס@shiranraz.com. אני שירן רז, ויהיה איתכם גם בפרק הבא.